I spent 3 months building a beautiful hand-carved chess set for the 60th birthday of my father. I poured my soul into every piece, but the very next morning I found it sitting in the trash at the curb. That was the moment I finally realized I was begging for love from a man who had no heart to give. If you want to hear how I stopped trying to please my toxic family and took back what was rightfully mine, hit that subscribe button because this story is a wild ride from start to finish. Let me back up. My name is Michael, and I am 32 years old. I grew up in a small town right outside Knoxville, Tennessee. My dad, Gerald, was a tough contractor who built houses with his bare hands. He firmly believed that love was something you had to earn. My older brother, Trent, was exactly what my dad always wanted in a son. He was tall, loud, athletic, and walked into every room like he owned it. On the other hand, my mom, Jolene, was sweet, but she was the ultimate peacemaker. Her entire personality was about sweeping all of our family problems under the rug so nobody had to deal with them. And then there was me. I was the quiet kid. I liked reading books and I loved building things, but not houses like my dad. I was obsessed with woodcarving. It all started when I was 12 and my grandfather Silas taught me the basics during a summer visit. Silas was my maternal grandfather. He was a gentle, patient man who smelled like cedar wood and pipe tobacco. He showed me how to look at a raw block of wood and find the shape hiding inside it. I completely fell in love with the craft. By the time I turned 16, I was carving jewelry boxes and animal figurines that actually impressed people. But here is the sad truth. My dad never cared about it. Not even once. If Trent came home with a shiny second-place football trophy, my dad would immediately clear a spot on the fireplace mantle. If I came home with a first-place blue ribbon from the state fair for a carved eagle, my dad would just nod, say, "That is nice," and go right back to watching television. He treated my deep passion like a silly little hobby I would eventually outgrow. But Trent was treated like royalty. Right after high school, Trent joined the family business. They went to job sites together and talked about construction all through dinner while I sat there eating my mashed potatoes in total silence. I moved out when I was 18. I got a tiny apartment, worked at a local hardware store during the day, and carved at night. I started selling my pieces online and at craft markets. I also taught myself how to play chess around that time. It was a peaceful strategy game for me. Eventually, I combined my two passions and started carving custom chess pieces. My first set took me 2 months and looked pretty rough, but I never gave up. By the time I was 25, people were paying $400 and $500 for my custom boards. I even had a small online following. But my dad still did not care. I would bring my best pieces to family dinners and tell him about big orders I landed. He would give me a fake thin smile and immediately ask Trent about his latest contracting job. I felt like a boring commercial break interrupting his favorite television show. Even so, I kept trying to win his approval. Every single Father Day and Christmas, I made him something special. A carved picture frame or a beautiful wall rack. I would just find them shoved in the garage behind paint cans or forgotten in a basement drawer. But I kept lying to myself. I kept hoping the next gift would finally make him proud of me. So, when the 60th birthday of my dad was approaching, I decided to go all out. I planned the most ambitious project of my life. A massive hand-carved chess set where every single piece represented someone in our family. The king was modeled after Grandpa Silas, the bishops were my parents, the knights were Trent and me. The rooks were the childhood homes, and the pawns were tiny hand-carved tools representing the trades of our family: hammers, saws, and chisels. I worked on it for 3 straight months. I stayed up until 2 in the morning sanding and shaping every detail. I built a gorgeous walnut and maple board and engraved a small brass plate on the lid that read, "To Dad, 60 years of building things that last. Love, Michael." I wrapped it perfectly in brown craft paper and tied it with twine. I drove to their house for the party feeling a stupid amount of hope. The party was crowded with neighbors and guys from the job sites. Trent was there with his wife and kids. When it was time for gifts, Trent went first. He handed Dad a box containing a Seiko watch that probably cost $200. My dad lit up like he just won the lottery. He put it on his wrist and bragged about how his boy knew exactly what he liked. Then it was my turn. I handed over the heavy box. My dad took it and slowly unwrapped the paper. He opened the lid and stared at the chess set. He picked up the king, turned it over, set it back down, and literally just said, "Huh, that is something." Then he closed the lid, pushed it aside next to the cake plates, and asked who wanted another beer. That was his entire reaction to 3 months of my hard work. A casual brush off. I stayed for another hour, just pasting a fake smile on my face before driving home feeling completely hollow. But the absolute worst part happened the very next morning. I had left my jacket on a kitchen chair, so I drove back early in the morning. When I pulled into the driveway, I immediately noticed the trash cans sitting by the curb for pickup. Sitting right on top of the recycling bin was a brown paper bag. Sticking out of the bag was the exact same brown craft paper I used to wrap the chess set. I felt my legs walking toward it on their own. I pulled the bag open, and there it was. The chess set was still tied with the twine. He had not even opened it again after the party. He just threw 3 months of my love and dedication into the garbage, along with crushed beer cans and paper plates smeared with cake frosting. While I stood there staring at my broken heart in a trash can, I realized my life had to change. If you are enjoying this journey of standing up to toxic family members, take 1 second to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the crazy revenge that happens next. I could hear the garbage truck grinding and beeping just 2 blocks away. If I had arrived 5 minutes later, the entire set would have been crushed at the city dump. I picked up the heavy box and looked at the house. Through the kitchen window, I saw my dad sitting at the table drinking coffee and wearing the new watch Trent bought him. He was totally content and did not even notice me standing in the driveway. I put the chess set in my truck and drove away in absolute silence. I did not get my jacket, I did not scream, I just went home and sat on my workshop floor for a very long time. That was the last time I ever visited them. I did not make a big dramatic announcement, I just stopped showing up. My mom called a few times asking if I was coming to Sunday dinner, and I just told her I was busy with work. Eventually, the calls faded into occasional text messages, which I answered with short, polite replies. Trent called once to ask why I was missing in action. When I said I was swamped, he just told me not to be a stranger and hung up. Nobody pushed, nobody asked if I was hurt. That was the most painful part. I was so invisible in that family that they did not even realize why I disappeared. About 6 weeks after the birthday party, my mom finally came to my apartment holding a chicken and rice casserole. She sat on my couch and asked what was going on. I was so close to telling her the truth. The words were right on my tongue, but I looked at her face and knew she would just make excuses for my dad. She would say he did not mean it and that I was being too sensitive. Nothing would change. So I just smiled and told her I was really focused on my business. She seemed perfectly happy with that fake answer and left the casserole on the counter. But there was a massive secret I did not tell her. During those 6 weeks away from them, I had made a shocking discovery. My mom had asked me to go clean out the old cabin of Grandpa Silas to see if they should sell it. The cabin had been empty for 4 years since he passed away. I went out there and it still smelled exactly like him. But while cleaning his bedroom closet, I found an old metal lockbox. Inside the box, I found a stack of papers, and right in the middle was a handwritten draft of his will. Attached to it was a note about updating the official version with his attorney. In this handwritten draft, Grandpa Silas clearly wrote that the cabin and the 5 acres of land were supposed to go directly to me, not to the estate, not to be split up, to Michael. He literally wrote that I was the only one who ever loved the place the way he did, and that I was the only one who would take care of it. I sat on his bed and read those words 4 times. Grandpa saw me. He was the only person who actually valued me, but somehow between this handwritten draft and the final official will, that provision completely disappeared. The cabin went to my mom and her sister Aunt Della, and they were planning to sell it so Trent could probably use the money. Finding that document changed my entire perspective. This was no longer just about a thrown-away chess set. It was about a lifetime of being pushed into the shadows while Trent got all the glory and inheritance. I was done being the quiet, invisible kid. I made a firm plan to take care of myself for the very first time. I wanted that cabin. The next few months were incredibly lonely, but super productive. I threw myself into my carving business like a madman. I stopped playing small. I redesigned my website, took better photos, and drastically raised my prices. I listed a beautiful chess set for $1,200 and it sold in just 3 days. Then I sold another for $1,500. I started getting massive orders from rich collectors and interior designers. Within 2 months, I was making more money from carving than I ever made at the hardware store. The silly hobby my dad always laughed at was turning into a highly profitable business. I also started spending my weekends working out at the cabin. It was peaceful and felt like Grandpa was standing right behind me. During one of those weekends, I met Elise. She lived down the country road and was struggling to fix a broken fence post. I stopped to help her, and we ended up talking on her porch for 2 hours. Elise was a veterinarian with kind eyes and a straightforward personality. We started dating, and she eventually came to the cabin to watch me carve. She sat quietly and then told me it was beautiful to watch me work. Nobody had ever called my work beautiful before. Everything was finally going right for me in secret. If you want to see how my family reacts when all my success and the legal battle hits them at once, make sure you are subscribed to the channel right now. While my romance and business were booming, I hired a sharp estate lawyer named Sullivan Pratt. I showed him the handwritten draft of the will. Sullivan investigated and told me we had a strong legal case. The draft was dated and signed. Sullivan even found a note in the files of the original attorney proving that my mom called and asked to simplify the will. With one single phone call, my mother had erased the dying wish of my grandfather just to split the money evenly. She knew Grandpa wanted me to have it because he told everyone, but she ignored it anyway. Sullivan also told me we needed a witness to corroborate the story. I went to visit the old neighbor of my grandfather, a retired carpenter named Harlan Box. Harlan instantly agreed to testify. He said Silas talked constantly about leaving the cabin to me, and Harlan wanted to make things right. Things exploded from there. A famous lifestyle blogger bought one of my chess sets and posted a viral unboxing video that got nearly 1 million views. My inbox crashed from so many orders. I was featured on a television show about artisan woodworkers. I even got a custom commission from a massive Hollywood movie star for more money than I used to make in a whole year. Elise was by my side through all of it, packing boxes and reminding me I deserved every bit of success. Then Sullivan officially filed the petition in probate court to challenge the estate. The court notified my family, and the absolute chaos began. My mom called me sounding completely panicked and angry. She demanded to know why I was going behind their backs about the cabin. I calmly explained that I found the handwritten will, and I was just taking back what Grandpa wanted me to have. She gasped and said this was a private family matter. I told her the family did not care about me for 5 months, so I was not running my life decisions past their committee anymore. She claimed my dad was furious and thought I was being disrespectful. I told her the lawyer would handle it and hung up the phone. 2 days later, Trent called. He tried to guilt-trip me. He asked if an old cabin was really worth tearing our family apart. That is the classic question every family scapegoat gets asked. I told Trent our family was torn apart decades ago. He just never noticed because he was the golden child holding all the pieces. He went completely silent and did not have a comeback. 3 weeks before the court date, my dad finally decided to show up at my house. He drove his old Ford truck into my driveway and knocked on my door. He walked into my living room wearing the cheap watch Trent bought him. He looked around at my expensive artwork but did not compliment any of it. He sat down and told me I was making a mountain out of a molehill over a rundown cabin. He said I was upsetting my mother and acting crazy. That was the exact moment I stopped holding back. I told him to sit down, shut his mouth, and actually listen to me for once. I looked him dead in the eyes and told him about the 3 months I spent carving his birthday gift. I reminded him how he barely looked at it and brushed me off. And then I delivered the final blow. I told him how I went back the next morning and found my beautiful handmade gift sitting in the garbage can at the curb, mixed in with the paper plates and beer cans. The room went completely silent. I watched his face cycle through confusion, realization, and finally deep, heavy shame. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. He quietly mumbled that he did not know and thought it was just a random decoration. I reminded him it had a brass plate with his name clearly engraved on it. I told him he spent 32 years treating me like I was totally invisible. When I finally walked away, it took him 5 whole months to even realize I was gone. He just stared at the floor and admitted he messed up and did not know how to fix it. I told him I did not need him to fix it. I told him I was taking back the cabin because Grandpa Silas was the only one who truly valued me. My dad slowly stood up, looked at my carved pieces on the shelf with real respect, and whispered that they were beautiful. Then he walked out. We went to court, and we won. Harlan testified perfectly. The lawyer presented the phone call notes. Even Aunt Della admitted Grandpa wanted me to have the property. The judge transferred the cabin and the 5 acres entirely into my name. My mom cried in the hallway, but I did not feel bad at all. A week later, I received a package in the mail from my dad. Inside was an old framed photo of me at 12 years old smiling in the workshop. On the back he wrote, "I should have paid more attention. It has been a year since that crazy court date. I completely restored the cabin, and I carve out there every single day. Elise and I are engaged, and we live together with 3 rescue dogs and a grumpy cat. My business is making incredible money, and I have a wait list that is 6 months long. And that chess set I pulled out of the garbage, I keep it displayed right by the window in my cabin. I look at it every day, not to remember the cruelty of my dad, but to remember my own incredible worth. I spent my entire life trying to carve things for a man who refused to open his eyes. Now I carve for myself, for the woman who loves me, and for the grandfather who always knew I was a masterpiece waiting to be revealed. And every single day I show up and prove him right.